Night. Thunder rolls, and a mansion stands under the lightning. In the kitchen, utensils pile up in the sink. Penelope falls to her knees. She holds a bottle of wine in one hand and a chicken leg in the other, gnawing on it. Leonardo stands at the door, quietly watching all this. He shouts, "Penelope!" Penelope is startled. She remains motionless. Then, she turns her head trembling. Leonardo slowly speaks, "Penelope, I am canceling our engagement." Penelope abruptly sits up from the bed. Cold sweat soaks her forehead. She gasps heavily. Was that a dream? A voice comes from the bedside. "Good morning." Mary walks in holding a water basin. "Last night must have been tough. I was startled when I heard you fainted and were brought to the infirmary." Penelope opens her mouth but cannot make a sound. She looks shocked. "I can't speak." Mary places the water basin on a nearby table. "You look much better. I'm so glad." Penelope looks around. "Where am I?" But it feels somewhat familiar. Mary picks up a comb and a mirror. They said once you wake up, go to the principal's office. "Let me help you get ready." Penelope takes the mirror. What the hell? What exactly happened? Her pupils shrink. A face with blonde hair and green eyes. Who am I? Her expression darkens. Wait. This is Penelope's face from Heart Restaurant. Gathering ingredients, developing recipes, managing a restaurant, serving food. This is a cooking-themed romance game. The goal is to become the beloved of noble young masters. In this game, Alice is the protagonist, a girl who accidentally starts working at the Royal Marcel Academy's restaurant. And Penelope is the villainess who always criticizes the protagonist's cooking. So, why am I the one playing Penelope now? Maybe it's because our body shapes are similar. If I stand on the protagonist's side, I can interact with those capture targets. She walks along the academy's corridor. The garden under the sunlight is full of vitality. She stands in the sunlight, hands clasped in front of her, a hint of expectation on her face. I really entered the world of Heart Restaurant. I'm so lucky to have entered my favorite game world. Even as a villainess, I will enjoy academy life. She stretches, ready to embrace her new life. But a word explodes in her mind. Expelled. Penelope's smile freezes. Principal Philip Vogel speaks coldly. "You're expelled." Penelope turns pale. Why? What about my dream academy life? The principal's voice is deep. "If you have any explanation for eating all the academy's food last night, speak now." Penelope's pupils dilate in shock. Ate all the food? Her mind flashes back to last night's scene. Wasn't that a dream? The principal presses. Nothing to say. Penelope stammers. She suddenly remembers something. Right, I can't speak. A pink system option box appears out of thin air. Option 1. I don't remember what happened last night. Option 2. I am not the culprit. Penelope widens her eyes. Options? The same system as Heart Restaurant. Can I only speak through options? She instinctively chooses the first option. I don't remember what happened last night. She is surprised inwardly. I can speak now. The principal's expression remains unmoved. Is that so? Too bad there are several witnesses, including Lord Leonardo. You can't deny it. Penelope's gaze shifts to the side. So it's Leonardo. He is one of the capture targets in Heart Restaurant. He was nearly poisoned to death in childhood and has hated eating ever since. He doesn't have any favorite foods. He is the hardest capture target in the cooking route, a truly impenetrable man. His capture route was too difficult, so I gave up on it. Leonardo's eyes are icy. Just as I said last night, I will have to cancel our engagement. Penelope looks awkward. Is there any fiancé who despises his fiancée this much? Leonardo spreads his hands. I don't understand why you did that. Penelope recalls, breaking up with Leonardo is the official route, so it's fine. But the problem is being expelled. The principal says expressionlessly, the academy chefs received countless criticisms from you and had to remake their dishes countless times. Because of what happened last night, all the chefs resigned this morning. Penelope looks desperate. Penelope didn't just bully the protagonist, she bullied the chefs too. The principal adds, in other words, the academy's restaurant is currently forced to close due to your actions. Expelling you is easy, but we need to resolve the current situation. Therefore, I command you to revive the closed restaurant. If you can complete this within 6 months, you will be allowed to return to school. This is an act of mercy I offer as a teacher, to atone for your mistakes. Until then, you will be indefinitely suspended. Penelope thinks, is this a new mode? Reviving un restaurant, indéfinie suspension, réadmission. The difficulty level is simply demonic. Is this a restaurant revival story? So, Penelope is the protagonist of this world mode. Heart Restaurant is in a new mode implemented 2 years after the game's release. This mode is aimed at hardcore fans, featuring Penelope as the protagonist. In a normal mode, you progress through character-specific romance routes. The normal mode has a multi-ending system, with endings changing based on affection levels. But the new mode focuses on turning an unpopular restaurant into a profitable one. It shares the same mechanism of serving food to characters to increase intimacy, but it's used as a means to boost the restaurant's popularity and does not affect romance routes. This is the characteristic of this mode. Penelope ponders, a dating simulator with no romantic elements. I haven't even played it yet. The principal walks up to her. However, you have the right to choose whether to return to school after an indefinite suspension or to drop out directly. If you want to be readmitted, you must revitalize the restaurant. A system prompt sounds. Two options appear before Penelope: drop out or rebuild Willian. Restaurant. She lowers her eyes. If I choose to drop out now, the game will end, right? Then can I return to my original world? Or will I die? She forces a helpless smile. It seems the only choice is to revitalize Willian, but I can't handle a hard mode playthrough. I only played this game to see the characters eat delicious food. A portrait of her mother stands quietly on the cabinet. A wisp of smoke rises from the incense burner. She rushes toward a middle-aged man. Dad, what are you doing? That's this month's living expenses. Her father tightly grips the money. Shut up. You dropped out of high school to work, didn't you? Her death and the match I lost today are all your fault. After her mother passed away, her father changed. Heart Restaurant was my only comfort in daily life. The game characters enjoying the food. It's so delicious. Can you make it again? Tears drip onto the screen. The characters in the game say the words I want to hear. Cooking brings people happiness. Penelope makes up her mind. I will rebuild Willian. I will prove it to you all. In this world that healed me, I want to live with all my might. Her choice is confirmed. I will rebuild Willian. The system prompt sounds. Penelope recalls the despair of reality. Even if I go back to the original world, it will only be hell. The principal looks surprised. I thought you would choose to drop out. Penelope scoffs inwardly. That's a choice only the original Penelope would make. Leonardo is equally confused. He looks at Penelope, his eyes filled with doubt. Penelope abruptly turns her head. What? A blue heart appears above Leonardo's head. Affection level, -10. Penelope is shocked. I can see affection levels. Leonardo crosses his arms over his chest. Penelope's expression darkens. It's actually a negative number. I'm his fiancé. In normal mode, the starting affection is 30. Is this hard mode? The principal looks at Penelope's expression. She must have made a difficult decision. Penelope throws herself onto the bed. All right, she has moved from the Duke's daughter's special room to an ordinary single room. But it's quite spacious here, too. She lies on the bed. The restaurant will reopen tomorrow. Will it really be okay? If everything goes well, the characters will come and eat the food I make. Sounds nice. A system window suddenly appears. Hard mode, clear conditions. Instructions state that you must be readmitted to clear the game. Let the characters eat delicious food. As their affection increases, the restaurant's popularity will also increase. Raise the restaurant's popularity to the maximum within 6 months. To be readmitted, Penelope abruptly sits up. She looks bewildered. Why is the tutorial suddenly starting? So, this is the difference between hard mode and normal mode. Affection is harder to raise than in normal mode. She sighs. It's Penelope's body after all. It's normal for it to be a bit harder. A warning message appears. Penelope turns pale. Affection won't just drop. It will instantly end the game. Countless profile cards swirl in her mind. There's too much to remember. The difficulty is very high. But just like normal mode, I just need to complete the quests. First, I must revitalize the restaurant within 6 months. Another system window pops up. The first quest is unlocked. Quest goal: serve food to the first capture target. Favorite foods increase affection. Disliked foods decrease affection and may even cause a game over. Penelope sits on the edge of the bed, looking at the system window in front of her. The first capture target? Just in case, I better check everyone's profiles first. Leonardo's profile card appears. Third-year student at Willian Academy. Crown Prince of the Gerardo Kingdom. Future King. Favorite foods? None. Dislikes: strong-flavored and acidic foods. Captured difficulty: 5 stars. Penelope's expression darkens. I gave up on Leonardo's route, so I'm not attached to him. Next is Albert Benedict, third-year student at Willian Academy. Third son of Duke Benedict. Free-spirited. Favorite foods: meat dishes. Disliked foods: vegetables, as well as bitter foods. Captured difficulty: 2 stars. Penelope rests her chin on her hand. Albert is a good boy. He has honest opinions about food. He's a classic type. I like that he has a puppy-like charm. Next is Roger Dominus, second-year student at Willian Academy, the illegitimate son of Duke Dominus. Favorite foods, mushrooms and fruits. Disliked foods, seafood. Captured difficulty, 3 stars. Penelope ponders, sound very normal, but his eyes are gloomy. Penelope continues her analysis. Although he is a loner, he is very pure. But if his affection gets too high, he becomes obsessive. He ignores everyone except the female protagonist. He ignores everyone else. Finally, there's Charles Benedict, second son of Duke Benedict's family. Teacher at Willian Academy. Favorite foods, seafood. Disliked foods, none. Captured difficulty, 3 stars. Penelope's cheeks flush red. He's the reliable older brother and teacher type. Everyone falls for this kind of pushover character. Charles smiles. I look forward to your cooking. Let's eat together in the infirmary. Penelope clasps her hands tightly. Mature charm, and the contrast of being a slacker. Who could resist him? Her thoughts race. When they eat, everyone shows a happy expression. I have some understanding of the characters' personalities and preferences. The problem is that the original Penelope had almost no interactions with the other characters. She lies face down on the bed. Oh no, I check my memories. I'm not close to anyone except Leonardo. How am I supposed to get them to come to the restaurant like this? I can't even strike up a conversation. She looks up out the window. What should I do? In the past, when I loved eating the cafeteria's daily specials, I never missed a day. But if I cook dishes they like and build a reputation, even without prior interaction, they might become interested. She clenches her fists. Now I must give it my all. Penelope stands in front of a red brick building. The building sign is engraved with Willian. She pushes the door open and rushes into a magnificent hall. She looks around. This is the restaurant where the protagonist worked every day. Willian Restaurant. She clasps her hands, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Rows of copper pots hang neatly. Cooking utensils and equipment are all available, but ingredients are lacking. Penelope rests her chin on her hand. Because of the incident 2 days ago, some suppliers backed out. Regardless, the first thing is to secure ingredients. She turns and pushes open the back door. The good thing about Willian is that I can harvest the necessary ingredients from the surrounding fields. Plump tomatoes hang from the vines, and the eggplants are ripe. Penelope looks at the vegetable garden with joy. Great. Looks like I can harvest some vegetables. Now I need to plan the menu using the available ingredients. She ties on an apron, rolls up her sleeves, and prepares to go all out. Tomatoes, chicken legs, onions, eggplants, garlic. Ingredient prep complete. Penelope wields the knife swiftly, first chopping the ingredients. She pours olive oil into the pot and sautés minced garlic until fragrant. Then add tomatoes, oregano, wine, and broth simmering on low heat. Finally, season with spices. Done. A plate of tomato chicken stew is placed on the table, bright in color. Penelope takes a bite. Delicious. My experience working part-time in a kitchen paid off. Cooking in the game was just inputting commands. But without gathering ingredients, I can't make dishes for the game characters. First, I must get ordinary students to taste it as well to steadily increase the restaurant's popularity. Penelope stands at the entrance of the restaurant, holding up a sign, Willian Restaurant Open. However, no one approaches. Not being able to speak normally is an obstacle. People directly avoid Penelope's presence. She stands all alone. Oh no! Absolutely no one is coming. A few students whisper in the distance. How can the Duke's daughter work like a commoner? Penelope's cooking must be impossible to swallow, right? They laugh contemptuously. Maybe it's even poisoned. Penelope's smile freezes. This is too mean. This isn't an issue of cooking skills anymore, but about rebuilding trust. What exactly did the original Penelope do? In the game, a gasp comes from the crowd. Roger walks over carrying a drawing board. Penelope's eyes light up. Capture target, Roger. It would be bad if he isn't feeling well, but he is the easiest character to capture. Penelope has a flash of inspiration, right? I wonder if Roger would like to try the tomato chicken stew. She hurriedly runs up to him, mumbling something. Roger is startled. Penelope freezes. Oh no, I forgot I can't speak. Roger runs away in a flash. Penelope sighs helplessly. Wait, does anyone run away like that? Doesn't he want to eat my cooking? Penelope turns around. I'll close the restaurant for today. I might as well make some honey lemonade and head back to my room. She walks dejectedly, hugging a bottle. I ended up closing after all. If I want to restore everyone's trust in me and raise their affection, it won't work with this body. She stops in her tracks and sees a man leaning against a tree trunk. It's Leonardo. Penelope looks at him. Is he resting in a place like this? She turns to walk away. That uncapturable man won't increase his affection no matter what. I'll just ignore him for now. She abruptly turns back and quickly walks to Leonardo's side. Just as I thought, he looks exhausted. His health must be very poor. Two options appear before Penelope. Call out to him or do not call. She ultimately crouches down. Are you okay? Leonardo slowly opens his eyes, his purple pupils reflecting her figure. Penelope. He closes his eyes. I'm fine, don't worry. Penelope looks at his pale face. Could be heat stroke? Heat stroke requires emergency treatment. The system pops up options. Go home quietly or call someone for help. Penelope widens her eyes. How can this be? I have water, but there's no option to let him drink. A flash of resolve crosses her eyes. It's come to this. Penelope reaches out, about to hand him the water bottle. A golden light flashes. Invisible chains instantly wrap around her body, locking her firmly in place. She is horrified to discover that as long as she tries to make a move outside of the options, her body will be forcibly immobilized. She stares at Leonardo's pale face. Every second counts. Penelope's pupils contract in anger. Just the existence of these options is detestable. Her eyes are resolute. Such things should disappear. She strikes the system window with all her might. Leonardo's eyelids twitch slightly, seemingly disturbed by the noise. What was that sound just now? The system window forcefully shatters, turning into countless pink light fragments. Penelope realizes, I broke the options. The chains are gone. I can move, and I can finally speak. She suddenly steps forward. Lord Leonardo. Leonardo looks at her weakly. Why are you here? Penelope drops to her knees and hands him the water bottle. You're dehydrated. Drink this quickly. Leonardo tilts his head back to drink. He puts down the bottle, his brows slightly furrowing. There's lemon in this. Penelope turns pale. Oh no. Leonardo hates acidic things. Is the game over? Leonardo speaks again. I'm fine for now. Penelope breathes a sigh of relief. Leonardo abruptly stands up. Penelope looks panicked. She hurriedly follows him. Your complexion is terrible. Have you had breakfast? Leonardo shakes his head. No. Penelope thinks, what do I do? He could faint at any moment. I have to find a way to get him to the infirmary. A figure walks across the corridor. Roger holding books. His gaze calm. Penelope suddenly calls out. Roger is startled, his body trembling. Penelope pleads, sorry for startling you. I need a favor. She points to Leonardo next to her. Can you take him to the infirmary? Roger looks completely bewildered. Why me? Penelope's expression is earnest. Even if I try to help him, he will refuse. She lunges toward Roger, please. Roger steps back in a panic. He struggles to speak. Understood. Roger supports Leonardo, and the two stagger away. Penelope watches from behind, deep in thought. Leonardo was sweating so much. He'll get sick like this. He needs to eat something. Penelope returns to the restaurant. She rolls up her sleeves. He drank my homemade lemonade. Maybe he will eat the food I make. Fortunately, I still have some good ingredients. Chicken thigh meat, lettuce, and tomatoes. Bread and butter. First, season the chicken with salt and pepper. Then pan fry until golden brown. The chicken breast sizzles in the pan. She spreads butter on the bread and adds the sliced ingredients. Chicken sandwich done. Penelope holds the lunchbox, a hint of blush on her face. No extra seasonings. Leonardo should like it, right? Leonardo walks alone in the sunlit corridor. Penelope jogs up to him. Lord Leonardo. Leonardo turns around. Penelope asks, are you feeling better now? Leonardo nods. I've rested enough. Penelope sighs in relief. That's good. She hands over the lunchbox. Eating some food will make you feel better. She opens the lunchbox. It's a sandwich. Leonardo pauses upon hearing this. Leonardo doesn't eat food made by people he doesn't trust. But perhaps due to the atmosphere, Penelope asks, full of anticipation, I only used simple seasoning. What do you think? Leonardo's eyes turn icy. I'm sorry. I don't eat unverified food. Penelope closes her eyes and smiles, just as I thought. Yes, you're right. I was being presumptuous. Leonardo quietly watches her. He suddenly speaks. The lemonade you gave me earlier saved my life. Penelope abruptly looks up, her face filled with astonishment. Leonardo continues, I appreciate your judgment at that time. Penelope smiles slightly. You're welcome. She suddenly freezes. The affection level above Leonardo's head begins to change. A pink heart appears. Penelope looks astonished. The affection changed from a friendship route to the romance route. Is there still a romance route in the new mode? Penelope's face shows a hint of surprise. Why did the romance route suddenly unlock? Leonardo looks bewildered. Did I say something shocking? Penelope waves her hand. It's a bit surprising. No one has ever thanked me like that before. She lowers her head. I'm just a little surprised. After all, my personality is terrible. Everyone hates me, don't they? In a memory, two girls whisper, you probably don't want to eat anything made by Penelope, right? If you eat it, you'll become just like her. Even your engagement will be canceled. In the depths of Penelope's memories, she longed for a slender figure. After getting engaged to Leonardo, Penelope tried to lose weight, but to no avail. She gave up dieting and instead binge ate, eventually ending up with her current physique. Her pride as a duke's daughter was completely shattered. That pain still lingers in my heart today. Leonardo turns his head. What's wrong? Penelope keeps her head down. Sorry. I just thought of others' criticisms of me, not only about my personality, but also my appearance. Someone once told the restaurant staff that if they ended up with someone with my body shape, their engagement might be canceled. Even for me, someone who never cared about my figure, hearing that was a shock. For the original Penelope, it must have been even more hurtful. Leonardo's eyes are sharp. Do you think I broke off the engagement because of your appearance? Penelope looks thoroughly astonished. I did think the incident the day before yesterday was the deciding factor, but I assumed appearance was also part of it. Leonardo sighs, considering your words and actions up to now, as well as the incident of stealing food 3 days ago. I simply judge that you're not fit to stand beside the king who will bear the burden of this country. His tone is firm. Your appearance has absolutely nothing to do with my decision to break off the engagement. What matters is not your outward appearance, but your words and actions. There is no need to treat insults about your body as reasonable criticism. Don't hurt yourself anymore. Penelope trembles all over. Leonardo turns and leaves. Penelope watches the direction he leaves. So this is what Leonardo is really like. A voice suddenly comes from behind. Penelope is startled. She confusedly turns her head. Albert is standing there. Have you seen Leonardo? Albert is Leonardo's childhood friend. Penelope smiles. Leonardo just left from here. Albert sighs. What a pity I missed him. Penelope screams internally. I never expected to run into him here. She ponders, I wonder if Roger and I could achieve that kind of relationship too. Albert leans in closer to Penelope. She is startled. Was he just sniffing me? Albert asks, you are Penelope, right? Penelope nods, yes. Albert looks thoughtful. I don't know why, but you smell different from before. Penelope is taken aback. What? Albert presses. Did something happen? Penelope looks panicked. I don't think so. I'm the same as usual. Albert spreads his hands. All right, even if something did happen, it's none of my business. Sorry for asking such a weird question. He turns and strides away. Penelope sniffs herself. Can he really tell the difference through smell? Another voice comes from behind. Penelope turns around. Lord Leonardo went that way. The man shakes his head. Professor Charles sent me to call you. Penelope looks incredulous. Professor Charles wants to see me? The man nods yes. He said he has an important matter and wants you to go to the infirmary. Penelope looks up. I never thought I would be summoned by a romance route character. I wonder what it's about. Dusk falls. Penelope walks along the corridor. She stops in front of a wooden door. She raises her hand and knocks lightly. The lock clicks softly and the door slowly opens. Penelope peeks through the crack, looking nervous. Excuse me. She looks around the empty infirmary. Is no one here? Her gaze sweeps over a hospital bed. Who's sleeping so soundly? A man with silvery white hair lies on the bed. It's Professor Charles. He sleeps peacefully. Penelope looks astounded. As a teacher, he's actually sleeping here in broad daylight. Charles is always this casual, habitually dozing off during meetings. Penelope's cheeks flush slightly red. She calls softly, Professor Charles. Charles slowly opens his eyes. He rubs his sleepy eyes. Ah, you're already here. He smiles lazily, welcome. He stretches on the bed. A giant zero appears above his head. This is his affection number. Penelope twitches her lips. Professor Charles's affection is actually 0. As expected of a high-difficulty character. Charles smiles and tilts his head. Before we talk, could I trouble you to lock the door? Penelope nods hesitantly. Okay. Locking the door means this is a conversation that cannot be heard by outsiders. She sits down on a chair. Charles's gaze turns serious. I'll be direct. He calmly drops a bombshell. You have been cursed. My specialty is medicine, but I'm also interested in witchcraft. Penelope lowers her head. Impossible. What do you mean by cursed? In normal mode, there was never a situation like this. Charles spreads his hands. As you know, Penelope. Penelope looks earnest. I promise not to cause trouble anymore, and then graduate from this academy. Charles continues, in this country, using witchcraft is considered a serious crime. For someone to take such a big risk, they must harbor a deep resentment towards you. Do you have any suspects in mind? Penelope stammers. There are too many possibilities. I don't know. Charles smiles slightly. I understand. I don't hate that kind of honesty. His affection level rises to 1. Penelope is taken aback. Did his affection really rise just because of this? Charles says, perhaps because of this incident, you've realized how much people hate you? After getting into trouble again and facing an indefinite suspension, there are rumors that your engagement with Leonardo has been canceled. Everyone has started venting their accumulated resentment on you. Penelope nods. That makes sense. But I think, considering everything I've done, this is unavoidable. Charles widens his eyes. Normally, this should be reported to the superiors. You might have to leave the academy. Penelope looks panicked. She opens her mouth wide. Is it game over? She clenches her fists. This is too bad. I want to return to school and graduate from the academy. I promise not to cause such an incident again. She tightly grips her skirt. Please. Charles pauses slightly. He didn't seem to expect this response. He closes his eyes and then reveals a meaningful smile. All right, I'm very interested in this curse. I will observe it for a while. Penelope widens her eyes. Thank you. Charles picks up a book. I'll lend this to you. It will definitely be of use. Penelope returns to her room. She flips through the book. I never thought the contents of a curse book would happen to me. She spreads open the pages in her hands. On it is drawn a hooded person painfully devouring food. Curse of gluttony. On the night of the full moon, you will eat madly against your will. The cursed one will have an inverted pentagram mark appear on their abdomen. Penelope touches her own abdomen. Her face turns completely red. Does this mean Charles saw my belly? This is too embarrassing. She continues flipping through the pages. How to break the curse? Unknown. How to suppress the curse? Unknown. Everything is a mystery. At least the curse won't trigger until the full moon. She feels slightly relieved. I'll focus on the task at hand for now. I must try hard to get Roger to taste my cooking. I couldn't make the food he likes last time. I must succeed next time. A knock on the door sounds. Penelope looks up in confusion. She responds, please come in. Footsteps approach. Sister. A pink-haired girl appears at the door. She smiles and greets. How have you been recently? Noelle clasps her hands together. She smiles radiantly. Sister. I'm so glad to see you are safe and sound. Penelope waves her hand. Hello. Noelle. She recalls, Noelle is my half-sister. I seem to like her a lot. Because we didn't live in the same mansion, we probably didn't see each other much. She smiles and holds Noelle's hands. Long time no see. Noelle looks confused. Sister, what's wrong with you? Penelope freezes. Did I misjudge the distance between us? She smiles awkwardly. Are you here for something? Noelle takes out a letter. Actually, I have something to give you. This is a letter from Mother. Penelope looks at her. You went through so much trouble to bring it here. Thank you. She takes the letter. My stepmother only loves her biological daughter, Noelle, but hates her stepchildren, Penelope and Edward. Penelope opens the envelope and takes out the letter. Of course, her relationship with Penelope was terrible. They argued endlessly every time they met. I remember this clearly. She also disliked Penelope's engagement to Leonardo. A letter from such a stepmother only gives me a bad feeling. Noelle stands aside. Sister, what does the letter say? Penelope says, Mother says she is worried about me. She will come to see me during the next break. If I can't attend school, she will take me home. Noelle smiles. To be honest, I don't think you need to work so hard, sister. Continuing to work in the restaurant. Penelope is startled. What? A quest window pops up. Penelope's heart alarms blare. I have to do something before the next break. There's no time left. I must go make Roger's favorite dish. Noelle continues speaking. So, I think quietly returning to our family home is best. Penelope turns and runs. I'm sorry, Noelle. I have to get ready to pick mushrooms. Let's talk later. Noelle stands frozen in place. Did I hear that right? Sister is going to pick mushrooms herself? A contemptuous smile curls on her lips. A noble running off to the mountains. How dirty. Penelope and Mary, both carrying baskets, walk towards the school gates. Penelope suddenly stops. So, right. Did I forget anything? Gloves, baskets, illustrated guide, water bottle, all fully equipped in the basket. Mary confirms, we brought everything. Penelope nods. Great. Perfect. She clenches both fists. Let's go pick delicious mushrooms together. Mary responds, yes. Albert, carrying a wooden sword on his shoulder, sees the figure in the distance. Penelope? Penelope sees him, and a smile blooms on her face. Lord Albert, good morning. Albert is a bit surprised. Where are you going so early? Penelope replies cheerfully, we're going to pick mushrooms. We're off. Albert watches their retreating backs. Are they really going to pick mushrooms? Penelope's figure fades into the distance. She enthusiastically flips through the mushroom guide. In the woods, moss covers the rocks, with a few small white flowers dotted among them. Under a tree trunk, a cluster of yellow mushrooms grows quietly. Penelope walks closer. She picks the yellow mushrooms and then places them in the basket. This should be enough. She turns to look at Mary. You must be very tired now, right? You can rest anytime. Mary looks bewildered. She ponders. Her coming to the mountains to pick mushrooms already surprised me immensely. But now, she's actually started to worry about a servant like me. She is a completely different person from before. Mary speaks. I'm not tired at all. I can keep going. Let's gather more mushrooms before we head back. The two return to the school with a bountiful harvest. Leonardo walks toward them. Penelope smiles and greets him. Hello, Lord Leonardo. Leonardo notices the basket in her hand. He asks, what is in your basket? Leonardo's tone carries not a trace of warmth. Can't answer. Penelope raises her face. The dirt smudges on her cheeks are particularly eye-catching. She looks directly at Leonardo. Yes. She lifts the white cloth, revealing a full basket of mushrooms. I want to use these mushrooms to make a dish at the restaurant. Leonardo pauses slightly. Mushrooms? Penelope's smile is incredibly bright. She proudly holds the basket of mushrooms, so I went to the nearby mountains and picked some. Leonardo instantly understands. So this is the mushroom guide Albert mentioned. He scrutinizes Penelope. The penny I know wouldn't do something like this. These mushrooms aren't poisonous, are they? Penelope vigorously shakes her head. No, these are all normal mushrooms. I have already reflected on my past behavior, and I am working hard to return to school. Leonardo shakes his head. Penelope looks helpless. I can understand why he doesn't believe me. She reignites her fighting spirit, holding up the basket. Then let's check if the mushrooms are poisonous. Leonardo picked up the mushroom and observed it. This doesn't look like a poisonous mushroom. Penelope let out a long sigh of relief. That's great. She was secretly surprised. Leonardo could actually identify mushrooms without a field guide. Leonardo added, but these are not suitable for eating. You can use them if you want, but you're not allowed to sell them in the restaurant. Penelope was stunned. Thank you so much. This is really a great help. Leonardo lowered his eyes. Albert said you seem to have changed recently. He looked down at Penelope with sharp eyes. But I still don't believe it. He turned and walked away, leaving a cold warning. Your actions will be constantly monitored. Penelope watched his back as he left. The suspicion of the poisonous mushrooms was finally cleared. She pulled herself together and swept away the gloom, turning to Mary beside her. Then let's make a mushroom dish. Mary responded with a smile. Okay, I will definitely do my best to help. The ingredients appeared one by one. Mushrooms, onions, garlic, milk, cream cheese, and pasta. Penelope looked at them, her eyes shining brightly. With these, I can make that dish. She began to work. First, she broke the shimeji mushrooms apart by hand. The knife blade swept across the cutting board. Shiitake mushrooms and onions were sliced thinly. The garlic cloves were minced. Butter melted in the hot pan. Mushrooms, onions, and minced garlic went into the pan together. The aroma instantly rose. Cream cheese and milk slid into the pan, seasoned with salt and pepper. The cooked pasta was drained and fully mixed with a thick sauce. Finally, sprinkled with chopped walnuts. A dish was completed. The creamy mushroom pasta shone glossily on the plate. Penelope handed the plate to Mary. Want to taste it? Mary picked up some pasta with a fork and put it in her mouth. Penelope looked at her expectantly. How does it taste? Mary's eyes instantly widened. She covered her mouth in pleasant surprise. Delicious. Penelope smiled and propped up her cheek. That's a bit of an exaggeration. Mary had tears in her eyes. It's really so delicious. This might be the best dish I've ever eaten. I mean it. If you serve this dish, the students will definitely come. Outside the Willian restaurant, a blackboard stood at the entrance. On it was written today's menu. Creamy mushroom pasta. The clock tower chimed. The hour hand pointed to 1 o'clock. The restaurant hall was empty. The dining tables were covered with pristine white tablecloths. Only the sunlight spilled quietly. Penelope stood in the center of the hall, looking around the empty tables. How could this be? Her eyes dimmed. Is there really no one here? This hard mode is just too difficult, isn't it? The front door slowly opened with a creak. Roger appeared at the doorway. His gaze fell on Penelope. You're still here. Roger is the eldest son of Marquis Dominus, an introverted artist. Once he opens his heart, he pours out all his attachment. He is naturally jealous. If you don't treat him with complete devotion, things will get very tricky. Penelope looked up, her expression filled with astonishment. "Are you here to eat?" Roger replied, "Yes. I was just curious about today's menu." Penelope smiled kindly. "We are classmates. You don't need to use honorifics with me." Roger's body stiffened. He covered his lips with his hand. "But the difference in our status is too great." Penelope didn't mind at all. "You don't need to worry about that." Roger nervously agreed. "I understand." Penelope smiled in satisfaction. "That's much better." She looked around the empty restaurant. "It seems there won't be any more customers. If you're willing, would you like to eat with me?" Roger's expression froze. "Are you sure?" Penelope smiled, of course. 2 plates of pasta were placed on the table, shining glossily under the light. Roger's eyes softened. He picked up a fork. "Thank you for the meal." Penelope watched Roger with full expectation. Roger took a bite of the pasta. A flash of amazement passed through his eyes. As if surrounded by blooming flowers, a tear slipped down his cheek. His body trembled uncontrollably. Penelope's face fell. She asked nervously, "Is it not good?" A pink heart-shaped icon flashed. The number jumped from 0 to 7. Roger jolted. He covered his mouth with his hand, tears welling up in his eyes. The prompt for mission completion appeared. Penelope smiled proudly. Success. His affection rating skyrocketed. Roger covered his mouth with his hand, a blush spreading across his cheeks. "This taste is just like the one from my hometown. It's really delicious. This is the first time I've eaten something so good." He lowered his eyes. "I come from a faraway small town. My parents sent me here to get a better education. I didn't know anyone here. I tried my best to do well, but everyone kept their distance from me. For a whole year, I haven't made a single friend." He looked up, a trace of relieved smile in his eyes. "Probably because I'm from the countryside, so no one wants to be my friend." Penelope thought to herself, "Honestly, you're just so handsome that people are afraid to approach you." Roger stared at the table. "Since coming here, I've always been very lonely." Penelope listened quietly. "So that's how it is." Roger's gaze fell on the pasta. "But after eating this, I feel much better." "Thank you, Miss Penelope." Penelope shook her head slightly. "I should be the one thanking you." A smile spread across her face, a blush rising on her cheeks. "I'm so glad you could eat it." Roger gazed at her, his cheeks flushing red. "So that rumor was false." Penelope tilted her head. "Rumor?" The rumored Penelope despised all nobles of lower status. Roger's expression turned serious. "Who spread such a vicious lie?" Penelope covered her hot cheeks with her hands. "Yeah, I really want to know who did it. Until recently, that rumor was actually true. If it were the old Penelope, she would never have spoken to Roger, the Duke's family looking down upon the Marquis's son. But the mission on her phone was very clear." Penelope looked up, a smile spreading across her face. "Hey, Roger, do you want to be friends?" Roger's cheeks flushed. He answered hesitantly, "Can we?" Penelope confessed, "Actually, I don't have any friends either." Roger stood up abruptly. "Please let me think about it. Thank you for the meal." Penelope reached out her hand, but Roger's figure was already far away. She tapped her lower lip lightly. In normal mode, we became friends so naturally. In hard mode, it's really not that easy to get close. A light screen unfolded before her eyes. The restaurant's popularity progress appeared. A star was half lit. A new message popped up. "Congratulations. Your restaurant's popularity has increased to 0.5 stars. Penelope sat on the chair. She quietly clenched her fists. Great. She suddenly remembered. "Oh right. I also completed a mission." The reward was for the first mission. Fresh beef and pork. The restaurant had unlocked new ingredients. The light screen refreshed again. The second mission has been unlocked. Albert's figure appeared. Provide food for the second capture target and increase his affection. Penelope closed her eyes, a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "I see. I understand how this game works now." The next target is Albert, a meat lover. The city clock tower stood tall. The sky was clear. A steak rested on a white porcelain plate. A brown-haired young man sat at the table eating beef. Penelope stood in the distance. "Thanks to the half-star bonus, there are really more customers. But it seems Albert isn't coming." Her fingertips lightly touched her lips, her gaze lowered. Maybe the pork didn't suit his taste. The clock on the wall ticked. Penelope was suddenly startled and looked up. Her expression turned solemn. However, the real problem is yet to come, because that wicked stepmother is coming. Her stepmother's face was as cold as frost. Her command brooked no doubt. Drop out immediately. Return home at once. Not only have you disgraced yourself by indulging your appetite, but after Prince Leonardo announced the annulment of your engagement, do you still intend to stay in this academy? Her blue eyes were as sharp as ice. There's a limit to how much one can disgrace oneself. Penelope clasped her hands tightly, her gaze resting on her knees. Yes, the two confronted each other in armchairs. Her stepmother leaned forward. What kind of perfunctory answer is that? Louise was once her father's mistress. After giving birth to twins, Edward and Noel, she secured her position as the second wife. A woman who loves status, reputation, and luxury, and loathes the daughter of the former wife. Her stepmother snapped her fan shut. I heard the principal gave you a condition. If you want to be readmitted, you must rebuild that restaurant. She leaned back, a hint of mockery on her lips. But for a spoiled brat like you, that's absolutely impossible. Her voice allowed no questioning. Drop out immediately. Return home at once. You are not a servant, so why run a restaurant? If it affects Noel, I will never forgive you. Penelope's eyes were firm. I cannot go back. Her stepmother stared at her coldly. A memory surfaced in Penelope's mind. It was her past life, where she was forced to drop out of high school to support her family. Mocking laughter scattered in her ears like broken glass. Penelope's eyes were resolute. So this time, no matter what, I must get readmitted and graduate from this academy. Her stepmother spoke impatiently. So, how many times do I have to say it? You simply. Penelope handed over a document. Please take a look at this information. Her stepmother took the document, her gaze sweeping across the paper. What is this? Penelope stated calmly, this is a summary. It shows that the number of customers has been continuously increasing over the past few days. At this rate, I can bring the restaurant back to life. Her eyes sparkled with confident light. Don't you think it's too early to give up now? The stepmother's fingers, clad in lace gloves, tightened abruptly. She half covered her face with her paper fan and spat out a sentence impatiently. Fine. Suit yourself. The Duke also said to let you have a free hand. I'll give you a little more time. Penelope let out a long sigh of relief. That's great. Her stepmother's voice suddenly turned cold. However, she stood up abruptly and announced condescendingly, by the banquet at the end of the term, you must produce actual results. Otherwise, I will determine that you are beyond saving, and then have you expelled. The heavy door slammed shut. Penelope slumped into the armchair, covering her eyes with her palm. I finally survived that. A pink light appeared before her eyes. A voice announced the completion of the mission. The reward was a necklace. Please keep it safe. Penelope picked up the necklace, her eyes confused. How am I supposed to use this? Another prompt sounded. Next mission starts. A new directive appeared. Before the day of the banquet, complete a total of 4 missions and raise the restaurant's popularity to 3 stars. Sunlight filled the kitchen. Penelope was working. There really is a lot to do. I just need to get the capture targets to eat the food I make, right? Yesterday's pork chop was a failure. Today I'll use beef. She picked up a thick cut of beef and carefully rubbed it with garlic salt and pepper. The piping hot frying pan sizzled. She seared the surface of the beef until browned. Then, putting on thick gloves, she placed the beef into the oven to slow roast. While the roast meat rested, she used the meat juices and red wine to simmer a rich sauce. This perfect color will definitely bring Albert over. The beef was sliced thinly. The sauce was slowly drizzled over it. Finished. A perfect roast beef sat on the white porcelain plate. Outside the restaurant, the sunlight was just right. The door clicked open. Albert walked in. Penelope's heart skipped a beat. He's here. Albert scratched his head in frustration. Hurry up. He grinned. I was just wanting to eat some meat. He held up a finger. 1 serving of roast beef. Penelope's eyes lit up, a blush spreading across her cheeks. Okay, coming right up. Albert took a seat at the table. He licked his lips, a hungry light shining in his eyes. He put the beef into his mouth and began to chew. Penelope's smile froze on her face. Her expression, a blue light flashed. A heart symbol appeared above Albert's head. -3. Penelope's pupils contracted. No way. The restaurant popularity rating dropped by 0.5 stars. Penelope's pupils contracted. How could this happen? She clenched her hands tightly, her face ashen. Back to square one. Holding a round plate, she asked nervously, is the roast beef not to your liking? Albert shook his head. The taste isn't bad. He closed his eyes, tapping his chin lightly with his finger. But it feels like it's missing something. Penelope pressed on. Missing something? What specifically? Albert crossed his arms. Hard to say, but it just doesn't feel right. It feels like something is missing. Penelope's face stiffened. Is that so? That's way too vague. She washed dishes by the sink, bubbles floating in the air. At least Albert ate it. Her figure looked lonely from behind, but his affection dropped, and the restaurant star rating also fell. This is just terrible. Penelope let out a long sigh. He obviously likes to eat meat. I thought it would go as smoothly as it did with Roger. What on earth do I have to do to satisfy him? Regarding Albert's character, I must recall his settings again. He is the arrogant and unruly third son of the Benedict Dukes family. Before entering the Willian Academy, he was sent to a martial arts technical school. There, he mingled with children from all social classes. Perhaps because of this, his manners do not resemble a noble's. He likes meat and rice. He hates vegetables and bitter things. In normal mode, as long as it was a meat dish, Albert would be completely satisfied. But hard mode isn't that simple. If I just cook whatever, today's result will only repeat itself. Mary walked in. Miss Penelope, let me help you. Penelope suddenly looked up. That's it. I should go ask the servants who prepare Albert's meals. If I could just find out his detailed preferences, I can make the dishes he likes. Mary looked at her in confusion. Sunlight poured through the high windows, filling the academy's corridor. Penelope walked briskly, hugging her books. She stopped in her tracks and lowered her eyes. Still no good. The headmaid stood with her hands folded in front of her, her expression perfectly composed. Regarding young Master Albert's personal information, we have no comment. Penelope leaned against the door, suddenly inquiring about a master's dietary preferences would naturally arouse suspicion. I should have been more careful. She shook her head vigorously and clenched her fists. Forget it. I must come up with another way. A strong beam of light shot in from the window. Penelope suddenly looked up. Her gaze sharpened. She leaned against the window. Down in the courtyard, Albert was swinging a wooden sword. The sword swished through the air. Sweat slid down the side of his face. He was practicing swordsmanship, his expression intensely focused. Penelope's eyes lit up. Wait, this is it. As long as I observe Albert, maybe I can find some clues. Leonardo stood behind her, his arms crossed. So, you plan to change your target to Albert? Penelope turned her head abruptly, her face full of shock. Leonardo. What did he just say? Leonardo sighed. Penelope looked bewildered, her fingertips resting against her chin. Change targets? What do you mean? Leonardo's voice was cold. I heard you were inquiring about Albert's favorite foods. He looked down at Penelope. Wait until you're no longer my fiancé before you do that kind of thing. Penelope stood frozen in place. After I'm no longer his fiancé? Her thoughts instantly halted. What? Our engagement hasn't been annulled yet? Leonardo looked calm. Did you not know? Penelope lowered her eyes. I thought we were no longer engaged. She asked tentatively, you haven't changed your mind, have you? You still want to annul the engagement, right? Leonardo explained calmly. The procedure for annulling an engagement is complicated. After all, it's a marriage alliance between the royal family and a ducal house. It takes time. He rested his hand under his chin and stated calmly, formally annulling the engagement will take at least a few weeks. Penelope breathed a sigh of relief. So that's how it is. Leonardo asked unexpectedly, are you planning to switch to Albert? Hearing this, Penelope gasped. She hurriedly waved her hands. I must explain. I absolutely have no intention of switching to Albert. It's not what you think. It's just. Leonardo slightly raised his eyebrow. Just what? Penelope began to explain. A few days ago, I prepared food for Lord Albert, but he wasn't satisfied with it. So this time, I want to make a dish that he will highly praise. I just wanted to ask you for help. Leonardo's expression softened slightly. Is that all? Penelope nodded immediately, of course. She secretly averted her gaze. I don't feel guilty at all. She clenched her fists tightly. Not even a little bit. Leonardo fell silent. A soft chime sounded. A pink heart materialized out of nowhere, with numbers flashing on it. The corner of Leonardo's mouth lifted slightly, and his eyes softened. Penelope's heart skipped a beat. His affection level increased. Her cheeks flushed slightly as she gazed at Leonardo. I never knew you could smile like that. Leonardo looked away. I wasn't smiling. Penelope insisted. You clearly just smiled. It was a very wonderful smile. Leonardo waved his hand. Flattery will get you nowhere. The pink heart appeared again. The number jumped from 1 to 3. Penelope smiled inwardly. His affection level went up again. You're really not good at lying. Leonardo let out a soft snort. Albert walked in. Since when did you two get so close? Penelope and Leonardo were both startled. Leonardo immediately denied it. We haven't gotten close. We just exchanged a few words. Albert laughed and retorted, you must have just started recently, right? He held up a finger. I've never seen you two together before. I was so surprised I even stopped my training. Penelope stared at Albert. Lord Albert is constantly active and training, so he needs more protein, carbs, and salt than the average person. In other words, a flash of inspiration crossed her mind. She suddenly realized the truth. So healthy and refined, meat dishes aren't enough. She shouted out, Lord Albert. Albert looked puzzled. What is it? You don't have to shout. I can't hear you. Penelope's eyes were determined. Could you come to the Willian restaurant again tomorrow? Albert looked reluctant. I don't really want to. The meat there isn't good anyway. A fighting spirit ignited within Penelope. She clenched her fists. This time, I will let you taste the most delicious meat. So please, you must come. Albert looked at her with interest. The corner of his mouth lifted. All right, since you're insisting this much, I'll go. Penelope stood in the kitchen. High-quality ingredients were laid out on the cutting board. She made up her mind. I'm definitely going to make the best steak. She pinched some salt grains and sprinkled them evenly over the bone-in beef. She slid the meat into the frying pan, adding olive oil and butter. Flames leapt up as the high heat quickly locked into meat juices. She tossed in garlic cloves and herbs to add flavor, searing both sides of the steak until browned. Then, she turned down the heat to cook it slowly, to ensure the inside was fully cooked. Meanwhile, she cut the potatoes into wedges. The potato wedges tumbled in the hot oil until golden and crispy. For the final seasoning, she sprinkled on more salt than usual. The bone-in steak and fried potatoes were plated. Finished. Tomahawk steak with potatoes. A perfect masterpiece. The surface of the steak gleamed with an inviting charred aroma, and meat juices slowly oozed from the cut. The potatoes were crispy on the outside and soft on the inside. Penelope stood up straight, proudly inspecting the dish before her. With this, Lord Albert will definitely be satisfied. Penelope walked over with a bright smile. Thank you for waiting. She placed the wooden board on the table. A giant bone-in steak with French fries. You can eat it directly with your hands. Albert examined the food. It doesn't look bad. He narrowed his eyes slightly and sniffed. The aroma of the food carried a tempting richness of fat. He tapped his chin with a hint of skepticism. But the taste is what matters. He grabbed the bone-in meat directly and took a huge bite. Penelope watched him, a knowing smile curving her lips. Albert instantly froze, his eyes widening in shock. It's so delicious. A smile blossomed on Penelope's face. Great. His affection level went up. The number was 7. The system prompt appeared. Mission completed. Penelope finally breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness. Albert picked up a French fry. He smiled, revealing his sharp teeth. This flavor is exactly what I wanted. You're amazing. Penelope's cheeks flushed red. She hurriedly waved her hands. I still have a long way to go. But thank you anyway. The restaurant's popularity increased. We'll be unlocked next. Mission 2's reward was revealed. A busy harbor came into view. Seafood supply route established. The third mission was unlocked at the same time. Provide food for the third target and increase his affection. Penelope's face fell. Establish a supply route? Does that mean I have to go negotiate business? The nearest port town, Lean, takes a whole day by carriage. The restaurant will have to close. Mary is not good at cooking. I can't leave the shop to her. Penelope held her head in agony. Even a short closure might cause us to lose the customers we worked so hard to attract. Albert put down his cutlery with satisfaction. He smiled. Thanks for the meal. That was a really good piece of meat. He keenly sensed Penelope's unusual behavior. He tilted his head. What are you thinking about? Penelope propped up her chin, her brows furrowed. Just have some things to consider. Albert immediately leaned in closer. What things? Tell me. Penelope hesitated for a moment. Actually, she stood by the table and explained, the situation is like this. So, I can only temporarily close the shop. Albert leaned back and stretched. Is that all? Penelope was stunned. Is that all? Albert lightly stroked his cheek, flashing a brilliant smile. Then just hire some more help. Problem solved, right? The sun was shining brightly. The restaurant stood at the corner of the street. Thanks to Albert putting in a good word with the principal, the restaurant finally recruited a few helpers. But they were all previously servants, not chefs. Facing the 3 new employees, everything had to be taught from scratch. Penelope picked up an onion. The knife blade fell on the cutting board. The way vegetables are cut will completely change their flavor. For example, an onion. If you cut it against the grain like this, it reduces its pungency. The two apprentices watched, completely absorbed. So that's how it is. The three apprentices buried their heads and scribbled furiously, noting down the key points one by one. Penelope couldn't help but smile nostalgically. It really feels like when I first started working part-time. Her eyes were filled with enthusiasm. I will teach you patiently until you can handle things on your own. You can ask me anytime if you have questions. The three apprentices responded in unison. Yes, a brown-haired female apprentice whispered. I heard her reputation is really bad, but she's actually a really nice person. The other two nodded in agreement. Night fell. Moonlight bathed the kitchen. Penelope washed the dishes alone, a faint smile on her lips. The brown-haired female apprentice hurried over. Miss Penelope, let me handle the rest. A blonde male apprentice also rushed over. I'll do it. Penelope smiled gently. You guys still have to prep ingredients early tomorrow morning. Finish up early and go home. The two apprentices looked hesitant. Is that really okay? Penelope smiled and reassured them. It's really fine. The three apprentices bowed together. Then we'll accept your kindness. We'll be taking our leave now. Penelope waved goodbye. Only she was left in the kitchen. The sink was full of suds. She lowered her eyes. The new employees are improving very quickly. Thanks to Roger and Albert coming by a few more times, both affection levels and the restaurant star rating have gone up. Everything is going surprisingly smoothly. At this rate, even if I go to the port town, the night was deep. A full moon hung high outside the window. Its cold light enveloped everything. Penelope looked up out the window. She was suddenly startled. Oh no, the moon is almost full. Her face instantly turned pale. What should I do? I completely forgot about the curse. The morning light was glaring. Penelope stretched her body on the bed, letting out a lazy groan. Mary's voice sounded, Miss Penelope. Good morning. Penelope suddenly opened her eyes, her emerald green pupils contracting in panic. Mary stood by the bed, looking concerned. Did you have a nightmare? Are you all right? Penelope slowly sat up. I suppose you could say that. I don't remember much of what happened last night, but it seems I finally made it through that full moon night. But I still feel a bit sorry for Mary. Memories of last night surfaced. Penelope was bound to the bed. Ropes tightly locked her wrists and ankles. Mary was forcefully pulling the last binding tight. She looked unbearable. Miss, why do you want to do this? Penelope ordered sternly. Don't ask why. Just tie me up tight. Mary trembled all over. Yes. She gripped the rope bewilderedly. Has the miss gone mad from too much daily stress? Penelope gently stroked her cheek, looking relieved. Thanks to Mary, I was able to overcome the curse of gluttony. I must give her a special bonus this time. She rubbed her reddened wrists. That sudden stinging pain lingered. She arrived at the infirmary door and raised her hand to knock lightly. She peeked half her body inside. Excuse me, is Professor Charles here? The room was empty. Is he not here again? Penelope looked around, her gaze sweeping over the hospital beds in the room. Could it be? She walked quickly towards a bed. Charles was sound asleep. Penelope called softly, Professor Charles. Please wake up. Charles slowly opened his eyes, letting out a lazy yawn. Oh, it's you. He sat up. Sorry, when a person gets some free time, it's easy to get sleepy. Penelope remained expressionless. Is it really okay for a professor to be so casual? Charles tilted his head. So what's the matter today? Penelope raised her hands. Charles's gaze moved down. I see. He gently lifted her hands. These are marks left from being tied up with ropes. A trace of a smile appeared on his face. I really didn't expect you to have this kind of hobby. Penelope rebutted loudly. No, it's not some hobby. It was to fight against the curse. Charles chuckled lightly. I know, but sorry for making you angry. He said cheerfully, you're even more interesting than I thought. Affection level rose to 3. Penelope was completely baffled. Why did his affection level go up again? Last time, his affection also went up for a weird reason. Professor Charles might be even weirder than I thought. Charles bandaged her wrists. In that case, as a current solution, starting next month, you might want to try a lock that can't be opened from the inside. Penelope's eyes lit up. Good idea. I'll do that next time. But just a lock isn't enough. Just to be safe, I should continue using ropes. Speaking of which, aren't you going to dine at the Willian restaurant? Charles rested his chin on his hand, his eyes sleepy. I don't have any plans. I want to use my lunch break to take a nap. Penelope lowered her eyes. I see. Charles smiled with his eyes closed. But if there are any interesting dishes, I might go. The spire of the academy was bathed in the setting sun. A gleam of light flashed in Penelope's eyes. In order to get Professor Charles to eat something, I must secure a seafood supply route. She made up her mind to go there next long weekend. A voice came through. I'm really happy to be able to converse with you like this, Sir Leonardo. Penelope suddenly stopped. Sir Leonardo? The door was slightly ajar. She gently pushed it open a crack. Leonardo was chatting and laughing with Noel. They looked very happy, and they looked very well matched. Penelope hid behind the door, yet her heart was inexplicably irritable. Why do I feel so unsettled? She was suddenly startled. The books in her arms slipped and crashed heavily onto the floor. The noise alerted Leonardo. He sharply turned his head. Who's there? He saw the shrinking figure behind the door. Penelope. What are you doing here? Penelope's face flushed bright red. Sorry. I'll leave right away. Leonardo turned around. Noel hurriedly spoke up. Sir Leonardo, where are you going? Leonardo looked back at her. Sorry. I have something important to discuss with that person. Noel froze. Penelope was equally at a loss. Her heart skipped a beat. Leonardo reached out his hand to her. Let's go. He grabbed Penelope's hand and pulled her along. Penelope looked bewildered. What happened? Penelope's heartbeat suddenly accelerated. What exactly is the important matter he mentioned? Leonardo rubbed the back of his neck, his eyes hesitant. That was just an excuse to get away. Because she invited me to be her partner for the evening banquet, and she wouldn't give up. Sorry for dragging you into this. Penelope suddenly realized, so that's how it is. Noel wants to be Leonardo's partner. That means she likes Leonardo. Leonardo pointed to the document in Penelope's hands. What is this? Penelope replied, this is an off-campus stay application. I prepared it to submit to the principal. She clenched her fists, her face full of anticipation. In order to buy the specialty seafood that Professor Charles likes, I plan to take a trip to the port city. Leonardo was momentarily stunned. I didn't know your relationship was so close. Penelope suddenly stiffened, her cheeks instantly turning red. Saying it like that sounds weird. She immediately flashed a bright smile. He has always taken good care of me, so I want to thank him. Leonardo's eyes darkened. Are you going out with him alone? Penelope puffed out her chest. Of course not. I plan to go alone. Leonardo lowered his gaze. Then I'll go with you. Penelope froze. She looked shocked. Why do you want to go, Sir Leonardo? Leonardo explained, because I'm still not at ease with you going alone. You need a guardian. Penelope lowered her gaze. But I can't trouble you like that. Leonardo's lips curled into a slightly teasing smile. Are you worried about being with me? Penelope hurriedly waved her hands. Her cheeks flushed red. Not at all. Leonardo made the final decision. Then it settled. The carriage bumped along the forest path. Penelope looked out the window. The atmosphere inside the carriage was stagnant. Leonardo remained silent. Penelope felt extremely uncomfortable and awkward. I need to find a topic to talk about. The pattern of a white flower flashed through her mind. Right, that handkerchief. Right, that handkerchief. Penelope finally spoke up. Sir Leonardo, who embroidered the flower on the handkerchief you used before? Leonardo took out the handkerchief embroidered with a white flower. You mean this one? Penelope's eyes lit up. Yes, that one. The embroidery is so exquisite. I was very curious. Leonardo paused. He lowered his eyes to gaze at the handkerchief. I made it. I embroidered it a long time ago. He closed his eyes, a faint smile appearing on his lips. My grandmother taught me when I was little. Penelope was completely stunned. She clasped her hands over her chest, her eyes sparkling with awe and admiration. That's amazing. The more I look at it, the more incredible I think it is. You're even so good at embroidery. Leonardo's affection level increased. Penelope looked at him quietly. His affection level went up without me even realizing it. Is it because I praised his embroidery? I need to return the handkerchief to him quickly. The carriage arrived at the port city. Penelope got off with a basket in hand. The bustling market made her eyes light up. At the fishmonger's stall, they were lined with fresh seafood. The bodies of the fish shimmered with a fresh fluorescent sheen. This trip definitely wasn't in vain. Not far away, Leonardo was surrounded by the townspeople. Penelope stopped in her tracks. It seems he's busy. I better not disturb him. I'll start exploring the supply route. She pointed to a fish on the stall. Hello, this fish. The fishmonger looked at her coldly. I'm not selling to you. He enunciated her name word by word, Penelope. Penelope was stunned. Why? The fishmonger said angrily, you just recently slandered the fish here. You said you would never buy anything from here again. Did you forget? Penelope placed her hand on her chest. Yes, I am very sorry. The fishmonger roared. I don't believe your words. Go away. Penelope had a look of despair on her face. I can't communicate with him. Two strange men whispered to each other in the corner, their eyes fixed on her back. Then one of them suddenly spoke. "You are Miss Penelope, aren't you?" Penelope turned around sharply, full of caution. After a brief hesitation, she answered, "Yes." The blond man made an exaggeratedly sympathetic face. "Oh, how pitiful. His Highness left you all alone. So you're feeling down, aren't you?" The black-haired man beside him laughed and chimed in. "His Highness is so cruel, leaving his adorable fiancée all by herself." Penelope frowned. "Are these people insane? He didn't leave me behind at all." The two men were looking at her with ill intent. "If you'd like." Suddenly, they grabbed Penelope. "Why not sneak off and have some fun at our place?" Penelope's face instantly turned pale. Her body stiffened in fear. "Help! Someone, please help me." The man in the vest wrapped an arm around her shoulders, wearing a sinister grin. "Come on, our place is just nearby. We can have a good time right away." Penelope's blue eyes widened in confusion. "A good time? Does this world have host clubs too?" The two men started pushing and shoving her, growing rougher by the second. "Come on, let's go." Penelope shut her eyes and shouted, "Stop it." The man in the vest grabbed her wrist. "Don't be like that. Just come with us." Using all her strength, Penelope screamed, "Help." The man grinned, his tone flippant. "Relax, it's fine. A little bit doesn't count as cheating." Penelope's green eyes were filled with refusal. "This is useless. They aren't listening to me at all." Then a cold voice rang out. "What exactly is going on here?" The man in the vest spun around and shouted at the newcomer, "What do you want? If you dare interfere with our business." Penelope looked over in shock. A figure stepped into the courtyard. It was Leonardo. He strode forward, fists clenched, his suit jacket draped over his shoulders. His dress shoes struck the ground, every step powerful. His eyes gleamed with a cold light. The two men's faces changed instantly. They had recognized him. "Your Highness." Penelope inwardly scoffed. "Weren't you acting so tough just now?" Leonardo pulled Penelope behind him. "I don't have time to talk to you. Get lost." The two men trembled all over, their faces drained of color. Then they scrambled away and fled at once, disappearing around the corner. Irritated, Leonardo pressed his fingers to his temple. "I need to thoroughly investigate this whole area later." Penelope lowered her head. With both hands clasped in front of her, she said softly, "Thank you very much." She gave him a grateful smile. "Mr. Leonardo, you're such a good person, to help someone you dislike so much." Leonardo turned his face aside. "Someone I dislike? I don't think that's true, Mr. Leonardo." A young voice interrupted her. A silver-haired boy suddenly ran up to them, panting. Leonardo and Penelope both looked down at him. Leonardo asked, "What's wrong? Are you lost?" The boy shook his head hard. "No." His eyes were brimming with tears. "Mr. Leonardo, there's something I want to show you. Could you come with me?" Leonardo fell silent for a moment. "All right." Penelope watched as Leonardo walked away with the boy. "Since he came specifically looking for Mr. Leonardo, I probably shouldn't follow." Then she smiled to herself and raised one finger. "All right, then I'll use this chance to buy supplies at another market." She gave a slight curtsy. "Excuse me." Then she turned and left. Under the bright blue sky, seagulls flew overhead. But the market shut its doors to her. The vendors glared angrily at her. The fish sellers impatiently waved her away. She dragged her heavy steps along the dock, her heart sinking. "Just as I thought, no one here is willing to do business with me. Everyone seems prejudiced against me. Looks like I'll have to give up on this market." She opened her eyes. "What's that?" A fishing boat was docked at the pier, and a fisherman hauled up a net full of bright red lobsters. Penelope hurried over and pointed at the catch. "Excuse me, are these lobsters for sale?" Without even looking at her, the fisherman replied, "We don't sell those." His tone was cold. "They're worthless." Penelope froze. "Lobsters are worthless? How can that be?" Another blond man looked at her. "Why are you so surprised? We tried them before. The big ones have bland meat and a bad texture." A light flashed in Penelope's eyes. She held her hands close together to indicate a small size. "The smaller lobsters are much more delicious." Everyone looked puzzled. "Never heard of that." The fisherman wavered. "But if the Duke's daughter says so, maybe it's true." Penelope smiled brightly. "Then how about trying a sample? Could you lend me a kitchen?" They gathered in the outdoor kitchen of a restaurant in town. Several bright red lobsters were laid out on the table. Penelope tied on an apron and smiled confidently. "Great, they're willing to lend me the kitchen." On the table there was only lobster, butter, and garlic. Looking at the simple ingredients, the fisherman listened as Penelope confidently explained, "That's right. Just season it with garlic butter. The restaurant where I worked in my original world used to hold a lobster festival. If I recreate that dish, it'll definitely work." Water boiled vigorously in the pot as Penelope dropped the lobsters in. First, cook them all the way through. Then they went in the blazing oven until golden and crisp. A sizzling aroma spread through the air. She took out the cooked lobsters, and while they cooled slightly, she mixed minced garlic, butter, and chopped parsley into a rich sauce. Once the lobsters had cooled a little, Penelope swiftly cut the bodies and tails in half. She picked up the prepared sauce and spread it thickly over the meat. The oven door swung open, and a wave of heat and garlic fragrance rushed out. Fat sizzled and bubbled over the shells. A dish of garlic butter baked lobster was placed before everyone, golden and crisp. The aroma was irresistible. The blond man's eyes lit up. "Wow, that smells amazing." Penelope smiled. "Please, try it while it's hot." The men looked at each other, but no one wanted to be the first. The fisherman and the blond man pushed it back and forth. "You eat first." Watching them, Penelope smiled helplessly. "I see. No one dares to try it first." Then a voice suddenly cut in. "In that case." Charles had appeared without anyone noticing. In his elegant voice, he said, "May I have the first bite?" Penelope froze. Professor Charles? His fascination with strange things really had begun in childhood. The young Charles stared at a blue crystal, his emerald eyes full of wonder. Charles Benedict, the free-spirited second son of Duke Benedict. One gloved hand moved with effortless elegance, and a gentle smile rested on his face. His father had once hoped Charles would become a knight. Dressed in a white military uniform, Charles held his weapon, but there was no passion in his eyes. Instead, he chose to become a professor and live a leisurely life. Penelope thought to herself, "It's good that someone is interested in lobster dishes, but why is Professor Charles here?" Charles elegantly extended a hand, wearing an easy smile. "It's the weekend, so I decided to come out on shore trip. You don't seem surprised at all, though I did hear you were here, and that was quite a surprise." Carrying a plate of baked lobster, Penelope braced herself. "All right. Now it's on the table." On the pink, checkered tablecloth, dish after dish was carefully arranged. The baked lobster and bread gleamed in the sunlight. Penelope's heart skipped a beat. "I'm actually a little nervous. I never thought I'd be cooking in a place like this for other people to eat." Charles picked up his fork. "Then I'll have the first bite." He speared a piece of lobster and slowly brought it to his mouth. He closed his eyes and savored it carefully. Penelope and the fisherman leaned forward, both holding their breath. The fisherman whispered Professor Charles. "How does it taste?" Light burst into Charles's eyes. "It's delicious." His affection level rose to 15. Something stirred in Penelope's heart. "Right, Professor Charles especially loves seafood." Charles exclaimed, "Garlic butter and lobster are a perfect match. I can't believe it. I've never tasted anything like this before." Mission complete. Penelope's eyes shone, and she clenched her fists in excitement. "I did it." The fisherman looked astonished. "So it really is true that small lobsters taste better." Penelope beamed. "We still have plenty. Everyone, please try some." The guests at the table picked up their forks and began enjoying the food on their plates. The restaurant owner took a bite, and his eyes lit up. "This is delicious. Maybe we should start serving lobster at our place." Penelope was quietly delighted. "Looks like the owner likes it too." "Right, let me check the mission reward." A panel of light unfolded before her. Mission reward, none. Penelope froze. Nothing? Her face fell instantly. "I thought I'd get a hint for winning over Leonardo." She clenched her fists and encouraged herself. "Forget it. I should eat something first." She walked over to the table. Charles was sitting there alone. "Excuse me." Charles looked up. He smiled gently. "Go ahead." Penelope took a bite and closed her eyes. A blissful expression spread across her face. The meat is plump and delicious. It's a completely different kind of freshness from river shrimp. "I'm so glad I got to eat this here." Charles turned to look at her. "By the way, how is the investigation into the curse going?" Penelope's smile stiffened. She lowered her eyes. "There hasn't been any progress. I don't know how to lift the curse, and I don't know what can suppress its effects." Charles looked apologetic. "I shouldn't have asked about that now." Penelope looked downcast. "It's all right. I've tried everything, but I still haven't made any progress. It makes me feel like I was going about it the wrong way from the very beginning. If I could just figure out that item, the road ahead would be much easier." Charles lightly changed the subject. "Let's talk about something more cheerful. How did you and Leonardo become so close in such a short time?" Penelope jolted in surprise. Close? You think Leonardo and I are close? Is that how we look? Charles stroked his chin, a knowing smile on his face. I thought this was a reconciliation trip. Was I mistaken? Penelope's cheeks flushed bright red. It's not like that. Leonardo only came to supervise me. Even if you call it supervision, we haven't actually spent that much time together. Charles chuckled softly. Even so, this is the first time Leonardo has ever traveled with someone. Rather than suspecting you, he's with you because he wants to trust you. Penelope blinked. Is that so? Then her cheeks turned red again, and she lightly touched them with her fingertips. I wish that were true. Leonardo's voice sounded from outside the door. What does that smell? Someone answered. It's the aroma from the lobster dish Miss Penelope prepared. Charles stiffened. Oh no, speak of the devil. Leonardo stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, his purple eyes full of scrutiny. What were you two doing while I was away? He shook his head. This isn't the time to talk about that. Penelope sensed the seriousness in his expression. What is it? At the doorway, Leonardo turned back. It's not convenient to talk here. Come with me. Penelope's heart tightened. Did something happen? Leonardo raised a hand and knocked. Charles and Penelope followed behind him. Penelope looked around, confusion filling her eyes. Leonardo explained, this is Jack's house. The boy who asked me for help, his father is in the bedroom. The wooden door flew open inward, and Jack rushed out. Mr. Leonardo, did you bring a doctor? Leonardo answered calmly, yes. Let me see your father. The three of them followed the boy inside. In the dim room, a man lay on the bed, breathing heavily and with difficulty. Leonardo and the others stood beside the bed, silently observing the patient. The man's eyes were shut tight, sweat sliding down from his temples. Penelope's gaze sharpened. I think I've read about symptoms like this somewhere. Charles took the man's wrist. He shows signs of subcutaneous bleeding. The man weakly opened his eyes. Who are you? Charles replied calmly. I'm a doctor. By the way, has anyone else shown the same symptoms? The man struggled to speak. No one as severe as me, but the other sailors on the same ship have started showing similar signs. Penelope's pupils contracted. Subcutaneous bleeding, an illness that happens to sailors. I remember now. She spoke with certainty. It's scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin C. She turned to Jack. Do you have any lemons at home? If not, I'll go buy some right now. Leonardo let out a small sigh. Lemons aren't a miracle cure. They can't possibly have some magical effect. But Charles shook his head. I don't think she's wrong. Stroking his chin, he said, I believe this man has sailor's disease. Leonardo and Penelope looked at each other. So that's what it's called here. Charles raised one finger. It's a disease only recently being studied, but there are records showing that citrus fruits are effective. So lemons are worth trying. A glimmer of understanding appeared in the man's eyes. I see. Charles turned to Penelope, his eyes full of praise. Even so, for you to know such newly discovered medical research, I admire you. Penelope's cheeks flushed. I just happened to come across it while studying nutrition. She immediately changed the subject. Anyway, we should make something with lemons that he can eat. I'll borrow the kitchen. In the kitchen, she tied on an apron and washed lemons at the sink. A bowl of lemons and a jar of honey sat on the table. She washed the lemons thoroughly, slicing half into rounds and cutting the other half into chunks. She placed the lemon slices into a jar and poured honey over them. Meanwhile, the lemon chunks and sugar simmered slowly over low heat in a pot. Once the lemon pieces turned translucent, they were transferred into another jar. The honey lemons and lemon jam were finished. Charles walked closer and looked at the results with satisfaction. Perfect. Can he eat it now? Penelope explained, the honey lemons need to sit for a day, but he can eat the lemon jam once it cools. Charles nodded. Good. We'll have him try it later. He turned to Leonardo. What are you thinking about? Leonardo raised his eyes. I was just calculating how much it would cost to buy all the citrus fruit at the nearby stalls. Penelope looked puzzled. Why? Leonardo explained, I'll distribute the citrus fruit to everyone in town to treat and prevent sailor's disease. Penelope didn't understand. There are so many sailors living here, but shouldn't it only be given to the sick? Leonardo's gaze did not waver in the slightest. Sorting people out individually would take too much time. The line of his profile was sharp. We have to act quickly. Charles nodded in approval. You're right, as expected of the wise king's son. Penelope blinked, right? Leonardo's father is that capable. People all call him the wise king. Leonardo will surely become a great ruler too. The door quietly opened a crack. Jack poked his head in. Penelope quickly apologized. Sorry to keep you waiting. The lemon jam is ready. She handed over the warm jar. Please give some of it to your father. Jack held the jar with both hands, his eyes full of hope. Will this really make him better? Penelope reassured him gently. Yes. If he keeps eating it for a while, he'll definitely recover. She smiled brightly. But if he doesn't improve, please contact me right away. She handed him a slip of paper. I promise. I'll find a way to help. Tears filled Jack's eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. He turned and ran back inside. Penelope watched him go. I hope his father gets better soon. Leonardo appeared soundlessly behind her, quietly watching her back. A faint smile lifted the corners of his lips, and his eyes softened. A pink heart-shaped icon appeared before him. The number was 20. Penelope murmured softly, all right, delivered safely. Now to clean up the kitchen. Then she froze. Why is his affection level so high? I didn't even do anything. A string of messages flashed before her eyes. Hidden mission complete. Cure sailor's disease. Reward revealed. Item needed for the curse of will. Oraret. Penelope spun around, tears filling her eyes, and rushed toward Charles. Professor Charles, I found the item for the curse of will. Charles turned at the sound of her voice, a relieved smile on his face. That is good news indeed. By the way, the item is... Leonardo's shadow fell over them. His voice carried a dangerous undertone. Curse? Penelope and Charles both froze. Oh no, I forgot he was still here. You can't find out about this. The two of them turned around stiffly. The atmosphere instantly turned rigid. Leonardo looked down at them, his eyes sharp as blades. I want an explanation. What exactly is going on here? An ominous purple aura radiated from Leonardo. A cold smile curved on his lips as he stared down at them. I think you'd better explain yourselves directly. Cold sweat beaded on Penelope's temple. She tapped her chin with one finger. I was only speaking hypothetically. Leonardo narrowed his eyes, the purple pressure around him growing even more intense. Don't think you can fool me. Charles smiled and said, Penelope, you should give up. Penelope's shoulders slumped, her cheeks flushing red. I'll explain when we get back to the inn. At the inn beneath the setting sun, the three of them sat around a table in one of the rooms. Leonardo sat at the head, with Charles and Penelope on either side. Charles looked relaxed, while Leonardo sat with his arms crossed, staring sternly at Penelope as she began to explain. She gestured with both hands, trying to sort everything out. Leonardo rested his fingers against his chin. So that binge eating was because of the curse, right? Penelope lowered her eyes. Yes, Leonardo's thoughts drifted back to the past. When I saw you living like a commoner, I really thought you'd changed. He pressed a hand to his forehead in pain. And yet you hid something this important. I still can't trust you completely. Above Leonardo's head, a blue heart-shaped icon appeared. The number stopped at 18. Penelope went pale. Leonardo had finally started to think better of me. And now, because I hid this from him, holding his cup, Charles stepped in with a smile. All right, don't be so upset. Penelope's face was reflected in the teacup. If the curse were discovered, I might be expelled from the academy. So I couldn't tell you, my fiancé. Leonardo lowered his eyes and fell into a long silence. I see. He looked up. I won't blame you for hiding that. The real problem now is finding the one who cursed you. The mage who cast it, and the person who hired him. Do you have any leads? Sweat appeared on Penelope's forehead, and her hands twisted nervously together. We haven't found any clues at all. Leonardo lifted his teacup and quietly looked at her. His eyes sharpened. Finding the culprit is our top priority. Penelope nodded in a panic. Yes, but we have no leads. I can only deal with what's in front of me first. She lowered her head, her voice small and apologetic. I'm sorry. Leonardo let out a sigh. Honestly, there's nothing to be done with you. This isn't just your problem. Cursing someone is a serious crime. For me, it's a grave case as well. Penelope lowered her eyes. I see. The existence of mages itself is already troublesome. She clasped her hands together. I was so focused on clearing the mission that I completely forgot about the rules of this world. She made up her mind. From now on, I'll prioritize finding the culprit. Leonardo raised a hand to stop her and calmly declared, I'll handle the investigation. Penelope froze. But this is clearly Leonardo continued. It's wiser to leave it to me. He lifted his teacup. This isn't something you can deal with alone. Penelope fell into thought. That's true. Leonardo is a prince. His information network is beyond anything I can imagine. Leonardo's eyes were calm. Also, to make sure you don't get implicated, I'll investigate discreetly. You can rest easy. Penelope let out a breath of relief. Thank you. Charles raised an index finger. Oh, right. That gray light stone I mentioned before. The one that can weaken the curse's effects. There should be some sold by the town jeweler. It's already late today. Go by it tomorrow morning. Night fell, Penelope opened the door to her room and collapsed onto the bed in exhaustion. So much happened today. I'm a little tired, but it's so nice that Leonardo is willing to help me. Thinking back, compared to the beginning, his affection level has risen a lot. Maybe I'm becoming someone he can trust. His reactions really are completely different from before. Resting her cheek in her hand, Penelope felt cheerful. Lately, it feels like he's been giving me gentler smiles too. She suddenly sat upright. What am I even thinking? She tugged hard at her own cheeks. I was just relieved because a notoriously hard-to-conquer character praised me. That's all. I have to get up early tomorrow. I should sleep. Morning sunlight poured over the seaside town. Seagulls circled through the vivid blue sky. Penelope felt refreshed. The weather is nice again today. She stepped out of the inn. Stretching comfortably, she noticed something. The smell of the sea seemed even stronger than yesterday. A wooden handcart stood right in front of the door, filled with fresh fish and live shrimp. Penelope covered her mouth, her eyes sparkling. Why is there fish here? She bent down to look more closely. Every single one of them was astonishingly fresh. Who on earth brought all this here? A pair of leather shoes stepped into view. I did. Penelope abruptly looked up, her face full of shock. She covered her mouth. The fisherman lifted a hand to touch the brim of his hat. These are all for you. A flash of memory crossed her mind. The fisherman who had always glared at her with a stern face. Penelope could not connect that man with the one before her at all. Her mind was in chaos. What's going on here? She stammered. Are you sure I can accept this much? I'm very happy, but why all of a sudden? The fisherman closed his eyes. Well, he continued, my son's condition has improved a lot thanks to the lemon jam you made. Penelope blinked. The image of Jack's sick father flashed through her mind. So that man was his son? Then Jack's smiling face appeared in her memory. Thank you, big sister. So this fisherman is that boy's grandfather. The relationship among the 3 generations linked together in her mind. I see now. The fisherman lowered his gaze. I never imagined you would cook for a sailor you didn't even know. My grandson was very happy too. You changed my mind. I shouldn't have doubted you. He pressed his hat to his chest. I can't ever fully repay you, but if you don't mind, from now on you can order anything you want from us. Penelope looked up, her eyes shining. She clasped her hands together, a bright smile blooming across her face. Thank you so much. Then I won't hold back. Leonardo stood by the window as the bustle of the morning drifted in. What happened? Penelope excitedly explained everything. Lord Leonardo, actually, a smile curved at Leonardo's lips. I see. That's wonderful. Penelope nodded energetically. Yes, this trip was so worth it. Leonardo reminded her. Then did you buy the Aurorette stone? It's almost time to get in the carriage. Penelope's expression froze instantly. I completely forgot. She turned and ran. I'll go buy it right now. Please wait just a moment. Leonardo watched in the direction she ran as the wind stirred the green leaves. He smiled helplessly. Night fell, and a full moon hung high in the sky. Moonlight illuminated the window panes of the manor. Back in her room, Penelope stared at the Aurorette stone in her palm. Good thing I bought it before returning. It's beautiful. Maybe it could be an accessory. If only it could be made into a necklace. The moment the thought crossed her mind, the Aurorette stone suddenly began to glow. A gold chain appeared out of thin air, bursting with light. Penelope looked bewildered. What's going on? A message appeared. Congratulations, Aurorette pendant crafted. Penelope stared at it blankly. So that's how you use it. She stretched out her hand to catch it carefully, but suddenly jolted in shock. The necklace slipped from her fingertips and hit the floor with a clatter. Her face turned pale. Staring at the ground in horror, she quickly picked up the pendant. It wasn't broken, but it was scratched. I wonder if it still works. Her gaze shifted to the snacks by the bed. The effect of the Aurorette stone could probably be checked by seeing how much she ate. I don't know what might happen. Just to be safe, I should have Mary lock the door from the outside. Sunlight streamed through the window. A new day had begun. Penelope woke up in bed and rubbed her eyes. I slept so well. Then the memory came rushing back, and her eyes flew open. She leapt out of bed and anxiously looked toward the bedside table. The plate was almost empty. Only 2 Madeleine cakes remained, so I ate almost all the snacks in my sleep. The curse hasn't stopped. It only weakened, so I still have to eat some. Still, that's better than starving to death. The door lock clicked open, and Penelope immediately headed for the kitchen. Sunlight filled the empty kitchen. She walked quickly to the ingredient area. The seafood in the boxes was untouched. Great, nothing got eaten. She let out a long breath. At least I don't have to worry anymore. Now I can cook in peace. Her gaze fell on the fresh ingredients. The fisherman had brought plenty of shrimp and shellfish. She rolled up her sleeves. I'll make paella. Fresh ingredients covered the cutting board. Fish, shrimp, shellfish, tomatoes, garlic. Her knife flashed as she chopped everything into pieces. She heated olive oil in the pan and sautéed the minced garlic and vegetables until fragrant. A tempting aroma rose from the pan. Then she added the seafood and salt, and the broth began to bubble vigorously. She removed the shrimp and shellfish, poured rice into the pan, cooked it first over high heat, and then let it simmer over low heat. Then she arranged the seafood back on top of the rice. Steam rose into the air. A squeeze of lemon juice later, a golden paella was complete, gleaming invitingly. Looking at the dish before her, Penelope smiled faintly. Rice is a rare ingredient here. Maybe if Professor Charles smells this, he'll come over. Charles's figure appeared from behind her. That really is an unusual dish. Penelope shuddered all over and spun around. Professor Charles, when did you get here? Please don't stand behind me. It's dangerous. Charles smiled. I smelled something wonderful. I brought my brother too. Penelope froze. My brother? Albert Benedict peeked out from behind the door and gave a quick wave. Penelope gasped, Albert.